Hello, Miss Shalini's class. Ms. Manuel and Ms. Wernig, Miss Allen, Miss Cruson. All right, if you can drop a line in there and tell us where you are joining us from. Oh, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle. We're so glad that you are with us today. We're going to start at the top of the hour, but like Miss Zimmerman said, drop in where you're from so we can see what the reach is today. We're glad you're here.
Columbia, Tennessee coming in. New Lenox, Illinois. Levittown, Pennsylvania. Tracy's, Lading, Maryland. More people coming in. Welcome, everyone. Oh, I thought that might have been Tracy's Landing, but I wasn't sure. So thanks for fixing that. Atlanta, Georgia coming in. Henrico County in Central Virginia.
We are very glad that you're joining us today. We're going to start in just about 1 minute. We are getting a lot of snow right now, which is exciting. You'll see that in just a few minutes, but thanks for joining us. And as Miss Zimmerman said, drop in the chat window where you're from today.
Oh, there's Miss Bell's class near Chicago in Indiana. Hello.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle and welcome to the Crossing America live stream. We are getting a lot of snow right now. I do want to just give you a heads up. If for some reason we drop off with you, don't leave the Zoom because I have capable people that will continue the Zoom. But we are in Acadia National Park at Schoodic Peninsula near Moose Island. And it is November the 9th. And yes, that white stuff that you see coming down from the sky is snow. How exciting is that? We are so glad you're here. A special shout out to the National Park Foundation. They have allowed us to do this whole idea of crossing America. They are our partners in this, and this is made possible by a grant from the National Park Foundation. We also want to thank Acadia National Park. We have been working with Ranger Kate for the last 4.5 years. And today we are joined by two amazing rangers who are just as excited about this snow as I am. Ranger Lisa, which you may recognize from our first video here, and Ranger Alexa. So we just want to go over a few house rules. We want to make sure that you stay muted during this until we ask you to share your ideas. You're welcome to keep the camera on, and if you have questions, feel free to drop those into the chat window. We have Miss Zimmerman from Tennessee and Mr. Kraus from North Carolina that are here today as our chat moderators. So ladies, how cool is this? Now, I'm feeling pretty soon my lip is going to go numb and I may not be able to talk very well, but are you excited about the snow?
Absolutely, yeah. This is an amazing weather event. We're glad to be out here today.
Well, I am so glad we're out here. So we're here today to talk about tide pools, and we have been talking with our students for the last couple of weeks about animals that you would find at Acadia National Park. And we talked about the idea of this place being so biologically diverse. that we're going to find moose and other things just right over there. But today we're going to talk about tide pool creatures. So why don't we go ahead and start that, and you share with us a little bit. We are going to ask you, though, if you're going to share out today, to use our hashtag of Crossing America. We want you to tag us at Dacia92. And we're also going to ask you to tag the National Park Foundation. Let me see if my clicker has just frozen and it is not working. So we're going to change batteries in just a moment. So hang with us. Let's see what's happened here. There we go. So there is our hashtags for this. So we're actually probably going to ask one of our interns if they will come over to that computer, and you may have to be my advancer if that's okay with you. Yeah, so if you'll go ahead, Steve, if you'll show her where she's doing that from. Gotta love technology. Well, let's go ahead and just start right here, okay? So tell us what you brought today, why you're even here, and what you love about this place.
Sure. So the first thing I really wanted to emphasize is talking about some of the challenges that these animals face. So I want you to think about what it's like to live in a tide pool. So everyone, give me a thumbs up if you think it's easy to live in a tide pool, or a thumbs down if you think it is challenging. So it is actually really challenging to live in a tide pool. So the creatures living there have to deal with a lot of different things. So the tide is covering them and uncovering them 2 times a day. So they have to deal with living in the water, living outside of the water. So a big challenge that they face is desiccation, or the big scientific word, that's a big scientific word for drying up. There could also be some pretty big temperature fluctuations, not so much on a day like today, but in the summertime, those tide pools can really heat up. And then we lose a lot of oxygen in the water. So creatures have to deal with that, being able to keep breathing during these big changing events. And then big changes in salinity, or the level of salt in the water. As those pools evaporate, only the fresh water leaves, leaving that water more salty. And then think about the predators. So you can see behind me, we've got a nice big tide pool. I kind of think of that as like an all-you-can-eat buffet for predators. So these creatures living in these tide pools get cut off from the rest of the resources in the ocean. And then they face a lot of threats from the predators being able to come in, and they really have no place to escape. So a lot of challenges here. So we're going to start with some algae. So this area has a lot of rockweed, and they have some phenomenal adaptations to help them survive. So one of the first things is
I'm gonna be in this first camera.
the
Right here.
holdfast. So unlike land plants, they don't have roots, but they have a really strong anchor, and this is going to help keep them attached to rocks or the bottom of the ocean. And they're also going to have to fight that wave activity. So this is going to help keep them nice and anchored. If I can see that other kelp holdfast. So this is a great example of what one of those holdfasts look like. And you can see how this really grabs on and anchors the algae. This is a piece of kelp. And then another thing I wanted to talk about was how these things, you might have heard the word aerodynamic, which means going through the air really easily, but these are hydrodynamic. So they're able to move around within the currents of the water and not put nearly as much stress on that holdfast. Now, I want you to think about how plants make their food. So we know they make their food through the process of photosynthesis, and we don't see much of it today, but we need the sun for that process. And so these little air bladders are going to help keep this type of rockweed floating up toward the surface. And if you think about what maybe you used to swim with as you were growing up and learning how to swim, this is an identical adaptation to one of these swimmies. So helping to keep these close to the surface and closer to the sun for photosynthesis. So I'm going to move on to some snails that we have, some marine snails or gastropods. So this is a periwinkle, and you can see they've got a really good shell, which is a perfect suit of armor to help protect them against predators from getting eaten. And then they have this little door here. This is called an operculum, and that is Latin for little lid. So this seals them up. Remember, I talked about the desiccation or drying out. So that's going to help protect them. They've got gills, which they use to breathe. So that helps protect them. And then this is a whelk. So these look pretty similar, but there's actually one very big difference between these two creatures, and that is the way that they eat. So this one is an herbivore, or a plant eater. And then this is a carnivore. So I think about a carnivorous snail as being something pretty foreign to me, right? Most of the carnivores we know have really sharp teeth, good eyesight, keen hearing, not a slow-moving snail. But these have a very specialized tongue called a radula that they use to actually drill into their prey. So if I could see the mussel shell and show you what that's like, hopefully you all can see it. Thank you, Ranger Lisa. So this perfectly drilled hole was done by the mouth part of that whelk. And then they stick their mouth part in. It's called a proboscis. They also have kind of an enzyme they use, and they start to almost liquefy their meal, and then they slurp out the meat. So kind of a cool and gruesome way of eating. So these creatures, even though they look pretty similar, are actually very different. We've got one more limpet. And these guys are pretty phenomenal. They're also herbivores. They have this incredible suction power, and it would be impossible to remove them from the rock. We don't want to do that anyway because we wouldn't want to harm them, but they move around grazing on algae. They've got that same tongue, and they actually go out and forage during the day, and then they have almost like a home base that they come back to at night, and they will actually erode their shells to fit perfectly. We've got a nice piece of granite here, and they'll erode their shells so they have a perfect home so that no predators can sort of pry them off and get them.
So that is really interesting. Just in the last 3 or 4 minutes, you guys have shared multiple things that share this area. And they're not letting us down today. These creatures are here. Technology is letting us down a little bit. We're losing some cameras here with the cold air. Lost my computer a second ago, but we're still here having a great time, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to learn a little bit more, but I do want to just tell you to share any of the words that you're hearing, things that you're thinking about, emotions that you are feeling. Please be writing those down in your journals so that we can take those words later and create some beautiful poetry with that. I'm going to ask Steve just to check our chat for a moment to make sure we are still there. Everybody's, oh, he just gave me a thumbs up. We're still there. So those were interesting, but you've got even more stuff to share with us. So can you do that?
Yes, we certainly do. I love all of these amazing snails down here in the tide pools, and they all have one shell. So there is another animal out here related to the snails that have 2 shells, and they're called the mussels. So I can hold up my mussels like this. You can do it too if you want. It sounds the same, but it's spelled differently. Are we going to be looking at slides? Or
We are. We have lost our computer.
Okay, so I have got right here for you an amazing example of a blue mussel. So these again have 2 shells and they're holding tightly together. Now, I want everybody to think about Spider-Man. Maybe you've heard of Spider-Man before. Imagine holding out your arms and shooting out your Spider-Man webs, because they actually have these really cool yellow strings that come out of their shell. And I have a little pretend version of that with some yarn here. So imagine I am a blue mussel and I am oozing out some long, stretchy, strong string that is going to attach to a rock and hold me in place. And that's going to help me stay protected from predators and from the crashing waves. Now, another animal that lives down here that has a hard shell is called a barnacle. And whenever I come down to the tide pools, I got to tell you, it's one of the first animals I see. They're all over the rocks here. And I do have a rock with some barnacles on it. And though it is a hard-shelled animal, it is not related to those snails and mussels. It's actually more related to crabs, shrimp, and lobster. And I think that they're just amazing, because a lot of these animals, including the barnacles, when they are babies, they are teeny tiny. They are microscopic. So you would need a microscope to be able to see them. And I have a picture of what a baby barnacle looks like, blown up pretty big so that you can get a look at it. It's got all these neat appendages that comes out to the side. And when I've seen these barnacle babies in a microscope, they have a really neat motion. You can do this with me. Imagine you're a little barnacle baby and they kind of go like this. And it helps me identify them when I'm looking at them. But they're plankton, and that means they're drifting around in the water. And one day it's time to become an adult. So they will find something hard to glue their heads onto. Now, they don't use regular old glue like we use for crafts. They have their own built-in nature glue. They glue their head region down to a hard surface like a rock, and they're basically living upside down in that shell, which means they're eating with their little feet-like parts as other little plankton or floating by small plants and animals come by. So you can reach out like me, like those little barnacle feet, and imagine you're a happy barnacle in a tide pool having a little snack.
Well, Ranger Lisa, let's check in with the kids for just a moment. Kids, we want you to drop into the chat window where you have seen possibly some of these animals. If you live on the West Coast, you might have seen them at the San Diego beaches there. You may have seen them at different lakes or places that have different shells and things. So drop those in. And Leanne, do we have any chats about where they may have seen some of these things before?
Let's see, haven't popped in yet.
Now, Miss Zimmerman, we saw some of this at Cumberland Island last year.
Mrs. Pitt's class says someone's brother fell in a lake and saw barnacles. And Miss Bell's class saw some at the beach in Florida, the Chesapeake Bay. Luke ate mussels in Mexico. Miss Ferguson's class has algae in Tennessee, another Chesapeake Bay. Dresden Elementary in Atlanta students, they saw crabs on beaches in Florida.
Well, that just shows us that this wildlife is everywhere. And you just mentioned something that we might be looking at in just a few minutes, but isn't it cool that no matter where we are, students are seeing these types of animals and wildlife all around? Well, keep going. I'm excited.
All right, we're going to move on to our next grouping of animals, and these are some of my favorites. These are some echinoderms. Echinoderm is a scientific word meaning spiny skin. Now, I do want to mention that these animals tend to live out a little more subtidally. So that means a little bit beyond the tide pools. These are not things you typically find in Acadia, but we have gone out and collected some special things for this program today. So let's start with the sea star. Thank you, Lisa. So this is a northern sea star and spiny skin. I wish you were all here with me to feel this. So this feels rather spiny. So the one thing I want you to remember about this animal is that is a sea star, not a starfish. So many people mistakenly call these fish. And I want you to think about a fish that you might know with, obvious fins and a head and eyes, but this looks really different, right? So as with all echinoderms, these have something called pentaradial symmetry. So that just means 5-sided symmetry. So think about the shape of a pentagon having 5 sides. So 5 arms of this northern sea star. And they have a really cool way in which they move around, eat, as well breathe. So they have a water vascular system, and I'm not sure we'll be able to see. They have this little spot right here that they draw water into their body, and then all of that water helps them move around. So they have these tube feet. These are like little suction cups. So this is the way they hang on as well as move. Now I want you to imagine this sea star. I mentioned not looking like a fish and having eyes. So this sea star actually has 5 eyes. So where do you think those eyes might be? Well, if you guessed at the tip of each of the arms, you are correct. Now, these are not eyes like our eyes that can see color and shape really well, but they can sense light and dark and help the sea star kind of navigate around. Now, I think the sea star has 2 other really cool features that I want to talk about. The first is the way that they eat. So these are also carnivores, like the whelk we just talked about. So their mouth is actually right here in the center. And some of their favorite foods are blue mussels and clams. And the way that they eat is really kind of fantastically gruesome. So what they do is they take their arms and they pull the mussel apart, and then their stomach actually comes up out of their mouth and they start to eat the mussel or the clam, and then they pull it back into their body. So very, very different than the way I just ate my lunch. And then the other thing about these sea stars that I think is almost like a superpower is their ability to regenerate or regrow their arms. So if a predator like a gull comes and takes one of these arms off, they're actually able to grow it back. So think about how cool that is for an adaptation survival strategy. Thank you, Lisa. So the next creature we'll look at is the green urchin. And so remember, spiny skin, this definitely has some spiny skin, but besides that, it might not look overwhelmingly similar to that sea star, but it does have these 5 rows of tube feet, which are a little bit difficult to see when it is out of the water. Their mouth is also right here in the center. It's almost a little bit like a beak. These guys feed on kelp and they scavenge a little bit, but check out these spines. They're moving a little bit. I'm not sure if you can see that, but so again, this is great protection from predators. And I also wanted to just share 2 more relatives that we have. We don't have the live animals, but we have models of sand dollars. You might have those on a beach near you. So again, that pentaradial symmetry, that 5-pointed symmetry, this is just the test or the shell. And then this creature, one of my favorites, is the sea cucumber. So this has those tube feet and these fronds that stick out and eat plankton. So these are all cousins. They have a lot of things in common, but just looking at them at first glance, you might not recognize that they're related.
What else do you have for us, Ranger Lisa? Oh my goodness, I feel something coming.
All right, so I wanted to finish up with our last group of animals, the arthropods they also have hard shells, but they're made out of different materials and they have bendy legs. So I do have a puppet example today. So at first glance, it might just look like a regular old snail puppet, but you know, old empty snail shells can be incredible habitats for other animals. Let's see who's inside this old empty snail shell puppet. Here we go. Oh, I bet a lot of you are familiar. Oh, coming for Alexa. Here we go. This is a hermit crab. It's amazing that some animals can be habitats for other animals. So as this hermit crab gets bigger and bigger, it's going to have to leave this shell and find another shell that's a little bit bigger that can accommodate its new body size. So it will kind of back up into a different shell, try it on, give it a test drive, see if it's a good fit, and live there for a while until it's time to move shells. So another animal related to the hermit crab are the true crabs, such as our native Jonah crab. So let me grab that for you. Okay.
And I don't think these are puppets.
This one is definitely not a puppet. These are the real deal Jonah crabs here. They have 2 really big claws in the front, and they have a tough shell for protection as well. So they're going to be able to use those claws for feeding and also, of course, to protect themselves. Seagulls will definitely swoop down and try to pick these up to have as prey, maybe try to drop them on the rocks to crack them open. But you can see with their coloration, they do blend in very well with the colors of the rocks and the various seaweeds here as well. So again, this is our native Jonah crab. Beautiful crab.
And we noticed that you're holding that in a very particular way. I'm assuming so you won't get pinched, but that's important too, right? The way you guys are professionals. Don't do this at home. Don't do this at home, but you're holding them in a particular way. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we have a lot of experience with and practice with handling some of these animals that could potentially hurt us, especially ones that have maybe jaws or big claws like our Jonah crab. So we spend a lot of time learning how to do that in a way that is safe for us and safe for the animals. So a lot of times in our parks, you know, we express the we communicate how important it is to, you know, view wildlife safely from afar or in a way that is, of course, again, safe for us and safe for the animals.
Okay. Do we have any more?
Oh, we do. Well, I wanted to hand this one over because that was our Jonah crab, but we also have a green crab right here.
So yeah,
Speaking of crabs.
I know that there's been a lot of talk about these green crabs. So I just wanted to hold this crab up and talk a little bit about what it means to be an invasive. So this crab, we can identify it. It's a really easy way. So not all of our green crabs are actually green, but the way you can identify them is they have 5 points on either side of each eye. So 5 letters in the word green, 5 points on either side of those eyes. So these green crabs are invasive. They came from Europe and they're causing a huge amount of ecological destruction here. And they're causing a lot of damage to eelgrass, which is an important nursery for fish and other habitat. And then they also are very aggressive and they don't have a lot of natural predators. So I know this is something that you all have been working on, and we wanted to point out just how to identify these and what they look like.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. We'll save that for the last thing. So kids, we've been talking about this invasive green crab for the past 5 years now. And across the country, students have been coming up with ideas to remove these crabs. But then we've also talked about how do we just live with these crabs if we need to. So we had 2 challenges for you. One was to build a trap. One was also to come up with a recipe for if they're going to live here, then let's give the clammers and the wormers a better way of life by catching these and then taking them to local restaurants and making a really good delicacy out of them. Because Ranger Alexa was just telling me yesterday how she really could go for a crab cake. So, you know, normally we're talking about stone crabs or other types of crabs, but I'm thinking a green crab recipe might be good. Miss Simmerman, let's talk for a minute with some students. Now, 2 challenges are out there on the website. One is about learning about the birds of Acadia and talking about restoration and removing habitats if they're endangered, but one is also talking about the green crabs. So let's see if there's anybody that wants to drop in a chat window or raise their hand. What ideas do you have for these Acadia Rangers regarding these green crabs or probably their birds?
While they're doing that, Dr. Drizzle, could you or Ranger Lisa tell us how the green crabs got all the way there from Europe?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things about that, but I'm almost thinking it had something to do with maybe a boat, a ship. What do you think, Ranger Lisa?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear.
Yeah, so how did these crabs get here? These green crabs that are invasive?
Great question. So a lot of animals that are invasive, that are ocean animals, travel with boats. So some animals can actually attach themselves to the outsides of boats, and some animals might be in the water that's carried inside the boats. This is called ballast, and it helps with the buoyancy of the boat. So these animals might be at an adult stage, or again, a lot of these animals are microscopic plankton. They're teeny tiny, they're in the ocean water. They might just come over with these boats and get moved to another area that is not their natural habitat and potentially cause harm.
All right. So Ms. Zimmerman, do we have anybody that wants to share some ideas with the Rangers?
Miss Shalini's class, did I see that you had some hands raised?
We didn't get a chance to work on the challenge yet, but it looks like their brains are spinning. They're trying to think of some ideas there.
If you have an idea you'd like to share, if you'll raise your hand, use that little emoji at the bottom of your screen, or send us a note in the chat.
It looks like Miss Cruson, 4th grade.
We also did not work exactly on the website, but we did have a couple ideas we were talking about just now. So this student would like to share his idea. Make sure you speak clearly. Nice and loud.
I was thinking of adding like more of the green crab's predators to like the environment. And
Oh, wow.
And then when the green crabs are added or like controlled, they bring the predators back to where they belong.
That is a great idea. So basically what you're saying is to increase the predators here. So bring more predators, more native species here that can sort of take over and move those green crabs out. That's pretty exciting to think about. It wouldn't be an easy task because there are so many resources here that these crabs and these things eat. So we don't want to overpopulate too much. But I like that idea. I like the way you're thinking about not just catching them, but bringing in more native species to take care of that. Thanks for sharing that. Do we have something else?
Do I see anyone else? Well, we had another question. Oh, look, I'm not sure whose class it is. It says Slins.
Sorry, Sandra Lynn's. Clara has an idea.
Why did you here?
Oh, so she has a question really. Why did they choose to come, not here, we're in Colorado, but at Acadia?
Yeah, so wondering why they chose Acadia. And I guess it's more of a location thing. When ships are coming over from Europe and they're coming back and forth, that's just where those crabs ended up. Now, we are noticing, though, that these European crabs are on the West Coast too now. So somehow they're traveling around. Maybe they just really like it here and want to hang out for us. And we also just want to share that we're not mad at them. Like, it's not their fault that they're here. We're just trying now to figure out how to live with it, how to take care of it once it happens, because this Jonah crab, which is a native crab, we don't want to move it out, right? We want it to be able to stay here, but they're here.
Miss Pitts, Mrs. Pitts class, you're on deck. Dr. Drizzle, we had another suggestion come in the chat that says, what about a robot that could identify the crabs and then move them from the area?
I like that, a robot. Well, I can tell you that some of the teaching assistants that are up on the rocks looking at us are excited about that. They're kind of doing this because they would love to run some robots. Like, that would be kind of cool. And I guess we should have them look like a crab, right? Because we don't want it to look too out of place. In fact, we even have the interns over there that are actually acting like the crab robots right now. So that's a great idea. Do we have anything else, Miss Zimmerman?
Mrs. Pitts and then Mrs. Wernig. All right, you're on deck. I think you're muted, Mrs. Pitts.
Okay, there we go. Zaxon has an idea for us.
What if you get something that only the certain kind of crabs are attracted to and have a trap that they go into, and you can get them out and put them somewhere else and make sure there's no way they get back in, so you don't have to keep getting them out?
So Zaxon's idea about building a trap and then finding something that only those green crabs would be attracted to, and then moving them out that way. And, you know, one of the big things about this whole idea of green crabs, invasive green crabs, is that they're just taking over the resources. They're eating what other natives are eating. And also, we talk about the clammers and the wormers, the people that make a living going after or collecting clams and worms. You know, those invasive green crabs can go after those things too. So we just want to make sure that we can all live here peacefully together. We got to figure out a way. So I like that idea.
Yeah. Last, Mrs. Wernig's class.
Okay. So I thought maybe like so I thought stop. Sorry. Go ahead. I thought maybe we can put them in like a zoo or something like that, or like a nature preserve, maybe.
Yeah, so to collecting these green crabs and finding a new home for them. A preserve, a green crab palace preservation place. I like that. So we're not hurting them, we're just moving them to a new place. So Miss Zimmerman and Mr. Krause, aren't you excited about all of these ideas? These kids are thinking about how they can change the world one green crab at a time, which is really exciting. I want to show you a screenshot of where you can send all of your ideas. So I want you to think about the recipes. I want you to think about how to take care of these green crabs. Maybe you're doing one of the other challenges on the Acadia site, but we want you to share your story with us. These rangers are, they get bored sometimes. Like they have nothing sometimes to do at night. They work all during the day, and then at night they're like, wow, I really wish I could read some ideas or see some ideas about the green crabs of Acadia. So you can share your ideas on Flipgrid with us. So I know that Ms. Zimmerman and Mr. Kraus are dropping these codes into the chat window right now. And teachers, if you will grab those and then just hold on to those codes so that when your kids come up with their ideas, they can share these. Last week, we got over 100 ideas just in 2 days for Big Cypress. So I know that Ranger Alexa and Ranger Lisa would love to see these ideas. We've got a few more things we want to talk about before we end our Zoom today. One of them is there's a school in San Jose, California that took me up on a challenge and I lost. And because of that, I'm going to do something that I've never done before. But to preface that, we talked about animals on the shore. We talked about animals in the tide pool. So can you tell us about this next animal? And then I'm going to do something that I swore I would never do. So let's do that now.
Oh, wow, this is exciting. So yes, this next animal is related to those hermit crabs and Jonah crabs, and they do have quite the pinchers, but they live a little bit further offshore. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up for you. And when you see it, you can say its name out loud. Yes, this is our lobster. Now, lobsters are kind of iconic here in the state of Maine. They've got those two incredible claws. One's a little bit bigger and thicker. That's the crusher claw. One's a little bit thinner, more fine teeth. That's the pincer claw. They have these long antennae for reaching out and feeling along the ocean bottom. They've got these long walking legs and also swimmerettes down there on the underside of the tail. Now, as we head into winter, these lobsters are heading even further offshore, many miles offshore, because they can kind of burrow down in the deeper waters and the soft sediment. And you might think it's colder out there, but it actually can be a little bit warmer compared relative to the chilled shallows. So this is our incredible lobster here. And Deja, tell me a little bit, what are we thinking here about this special challenge?
Well, I did promise them that I would kiss an animal here at Acadia. So I think it's going to be the lobster. Now, I know that you're noticing here that these are banded. So because we didn't actually pull this one from the waters here, but it's banded for my safety because I need to keep this intact for other events. But I think I'm going to try to kiss this. Now, in case you're asking right now, yes, this is real. These little things are moving right now. So let's just,
all right,
here we go.
Hold it still.
Here we go. That was delicious. Had a kind of a salty taste to it there.
I can imagine.
Now, we also have some elusive lobsters here that are blue. Now, I've seen those before also, which is kind of cool. Either of you ladies like lobster?
Personally, I don't care much for them. I like to admire them more than I like to eat them.
Okay, so you didn't want to kiss one either, I guess.
Dr. Drizzle, we've had a request. They missed
I
the
don't eat them much either, but I do like to act like lobsters and crabs sometimes. My little claw hands keep me warm, and it's always fun to dress up in costume.
Nice. So, Miss Zimmerman, you were saying?
We've had a question and a request in the chat. They missed the opportunity for a picture. Could you pucker up and do that one more time?
Yes, we're going to do that one more time, Ranger Lisa. They missed the opportunity for a picture with the lobster, so I'm going to kiss that one more time. Thank you very much. If that's one of the teachers that I know personally, there will be payback for this. All right, so we're going to do it. I'm going to hold my lips there a little bit longer. Okay, that's longer than I kiss my husband, so I'm going to stop that right now. We're finished with that. How exciting is that? We're very excited that that happened. We've got a little bit of time left, so why don't we open this up for a little bit of Q&A? A few questions that you may have. So I'll stop talking for a moment and let my moderators take over if we have any questions.
Oh, we've got some
did-
great questions. Do you want to take
Going
the
back, yeah, I wanted to jump back to the beginning. When you just had the sand dollar and some of those animals, there were two questions pertaining to that. One, how did you get all of these really cool animals to be in your hand? And two, how is a sand dollar made?
So let me first start with the question of how we got these creatures. So as Ranger Lisa was saying, you know, we take a lot of care to be careful of these creatures. We respect them very much. We actually have a saltwater tank. So we've had to go through a lot of training to understand how to keep this tank. This isn't something that just anyone could do. We also have to get a permit for collecting them and really learn a lot about the proper care for these creatures. So we have them in our tank. They live with us for a while. We do education programs like this with them, but then we're also able to go out into the tide pools and collect them. And the question about the sand dollar, were you asking what that shell is actually composed of? Is that the question? If that is the question, then it's got kind of like a calcium carbonate shell. So I don't know any other better way to answer it than that, Lisa. Is there anything you would add?
So is that like chalk?
Yeah, yeah.
What they would use on a chalkboard?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
chalky. Yeah.
Great
Next-
question.
Why only the high population of green crabs and not other invasive species?
So why do we only have the green crab species that's talked about so much here?
We actually do have another invasive crab called the Asian shore crab, although we're mostly hearing about the green crab because they're the most destructive and they tend to be doing the best. They also are the most flexible and are able to adapt to the changing environment. So they can deal really well with big swings in salinity, also big temperature changes where some of these native crabs tend to be more comfortable in colder water. The green crabs don't seem to care, and that's why they're so successful and we hear so much about them.
And as we think about invasive species, you know, we're in Acadia today, but invasive species are a problem for all of us in our communities. They can be plants and animals. So, you know, we want you to do a little research on that to see what is invasive in your area.
Two quick questions. What are the rangers' favorite animals, and will the park ever expand to include more land?
So I'm just going to restate that question. What are your favorite animals? And will Acadia National Park ever expand to bring in more land here? We'll start with you, Lisa.
Oh, sure. Okay, so one of my favorite animals down on the shoreline, I will have to say, are the snails. I love snail shells. I think they're beautiful. I think they're fascinating adaptations. There's so much diversity of color and shape, and I love all the interesting ways that they feed. So I've always loved snails. I'd say out in the forest of Acadia, I really enjoy learning about red fox.
Okay. What about you, Ranger Alexa?
So I think on the shoreline down here, my favorite animal would have to be the barnacle. And that's because they're kind of like misunderstood. Some people don't even know that they're animals. And I think they're just super cool. My favorite forest animal would be salamanders.
Okay. And do you think that Acadia would ever expand to bring any more land in? It's kind of a speculative question. That'd be a sort of a national park.
Yeah, I believe our boundary is fixed. Yeah, although we do a lot with conservation easements and working with other groups to help protect and preserve land, although it might not technically become Acadia, we're kind of stretching our reach outward and doing more conservation efforts through that.
And all parks are doing that. They're always looking for ways to take care of their lands better. You know, the National Park Service has over 425 national park units. As Crossing America and Expeditions in Education, we have visited close to 150 of those and met amazing rangers just like these guys. fact, you're seeing a graphic right now of the parks that we have visited just with Crossing America, which is our National Park Foundation collaboration. And you're going to notice that up in the top right corner, there's a big blue star there because we are adding Acadia to our live stream events, which is very exciting. We have one more thing to announce here today, and that is our Birdhouse Challenge. As most of you know, we have challenges on our website, and this is for middle school, high school, but we're going to announce our winners today of this. And if you'll look at the map, you're going to see that we're coming from the state of Illinois. Now, I am not close enough to be able to read these names out, but Mr. Kraus, I'm going to move to the next screen, and if you can just read the winners.
Sure. We have Aisha, Alexa, Vannery, Emily from Indian Trail Junior High School, Addison, Illinois.
Congratulations for this amazing project that they did some research on birds, they built some bird houses, and then they had to prove whether their houses would work. And I know, Lisa, that building houses, building bird houses, talking about birds is something you're passionate about also. Our first visit back in 2021, standing on that bridge, you talked about the birds of Acadia and how important it is for us to learn and understand from them. This has been fabulous. Now, I'm going to be very honest with the kids out there. My toes are frozen and I keep moving them around to make sure they're still there, but I'm not sure they are. But this has been a wonderful day of learning. Acadia National Park is such a beautiful place. It's hard to explain unless you've been here, but guess what? Today, you have been to Acadia National Park. Can we drop in the chat window today, what is your favorite part of this live stream? So teachers, just grab some answers really quick and drop those into the chat window. We're going to give you a few more pieces of information before we leave. Teachers, you're going to see a survey up right now. This is very important for our work. It helps us continue to do good things, to be good humans. So if you can pull up a device and grab that survey quickly, we will also send it in an email later on. Tell us how we're doing. Where else would you like us to be? What else do you want to see? How do you want to connect with these rangers now? Do you know, every park we visit, not only do we create content, but each park has a plethora of content that they can share with you. In fact, I think these ladies are getting ready to start their virtual programs for the season, and they would love for you to be part of that. So in that survey, we'll just make sure that you fill that out in the next day or two and help us. And anything was dropped. The favorite part of today, Miss Zimmerman, can you tell us something?
I sure can. It's unanimous. Kissing that lobster.
Well, we're special thanks to Ranger Kate for getting us that lobster today so I could kiss it. But how exciting. Now, kids, remember, when you finish school, this is a job you could have. You could work out here and you could kiss crabs and work with barnacles and what was that big eggplant looking plant, the sea cucumbers. You could do that. In fact, you don't even have to wait until you're finished with school. There are volunteer positions for you. So think about how you can make a difference in the world, change the world one national park at a time. I'm going to give you one more screen to look at. Teachers, you can grab this one more time. These are the flip grids for if you want your kids to share any words or poems that they wrote today, if you want them to share their bird challenges, their restorations, or their green crab ideas, you can share that there. So on behalf of the National Park Foundation, which we dearly love and appreciate, Acadia National Park, our groupies back here that are cheering for us, Ranger Kate, who brought us here, and special rock stars today, Ranger Alexis and Ranger Lisa. This is Dr. Drizzle, and we are out of here. Have a great day, everyone.